I'm going to tell you the quickest way to getting wealthy in America. Start a mega church. If you've ever wanted to own a private jet, this video is for you.
People get so mad at me because I fly a jet. It ain't my fault, it's Brother Copeland's fault.
This video isn't just about private jets, it's a deep look into the best business model in the world. This is Joel Osteen, megachurch pastor in Houston, Texas, who has a reported net worth in excess of $100 million. This is Kenneth Copeland, megachurch pastor in Fort Worth, Texas, who likely has a net worth in the multiple 8 figures. This is Jesse Duplantis, megachurch pastor in New Orleans, Louisiana, who likely has a net worth in the multiple 8 figures as well. They all fly private, they are all pastors of megachurches, and they all understand one secret in America. The easiest way to get rich is to do what I'll tell you in this video. The term megachurch generally refers to any Protestant Christian congregations with a sustained average weekly attendance of 2,000 persons or more in its worship services, counting all adults and children at all its worship locations. Megachurches have exploded in popularity in the last few decades, with the most notable being Joel Osteen's Lakewood Church. His sermons grew to the point of needing to buy the old Houston Rockets arena in order to satisfy the reported 45,000 people in attendance every week. America's largest church celebrated its move into the former arena for the Houston Rockets with a capacity crowd of 16,000, an upbeat sermon from its televangelist pastor, and a spirited welcome from the governor of Texas.
I want to talk to you today about who's in your ear. It's so important who we're taking advice from. We're listening to their counsel, following their suggestions, doing what they say.
Joel is one of the more popular pastors in what is referred to as the prosperity gospel. The thesis is that the more you give to the Lord, the more you will receive.
When you can see it, it doesn't take much faith. The test comes when you can't see any sign of what you're believing for.
What is the demand for the product or service prosperity gospel preachers are selling? Infinite. Who wouldn't want to hand money to someone and receive exponentially more in return?
Now, before I worked for the Lord, I made more money than you could shake a stick at. But you see, I thought it was right to be poor. I thought, well, you just got to be poor. I was willing to be poor because I was raised poor.
What these preachers do exceptionally well is get the audience hooked on their message.
But there's something God has put in your DNA where you can believe when every circumstance says it's not going to happen.
Prosperity gospel preachers are essentially self-help audiobooks in live format.
When you can see it, it doesn't take much faith. The test comes when you can't see any sign of what you're believing for.
This amazing business model never even has to prove the product or service exists or works. It's all based on faith. And the preacher can show that they've been blessed with private jets, so of course the system works.
I see that God came to, Jesus died that we might live an abundant life and to be a blessing to others.
It's the abundance that the preachers have that leads to their congregation wanting the same thing. Buy the books, attend the services, bow your head and pray, and make sure to contribute a portion of your income.
And I'm debt-free. I've been debt-free so long, I don't know what debt is at all. Everything I buy is cash. I understand? I just pay for it. I don't care what it costs. It don't make no difference. Why? Because I received the laws of prosperity in my life from Kenneth and Gloria Copeland. This man got under the laws of prosperity but never received it and died.
If you hand over your money to the pastor, and the mysterious man in the sky will know you did, and you will receive enough prosperity in your life to make the donation worth it.
And everything God tells you to do, I'll just give you an idea. Just this year, I'm believing for $78 million over and above my normal operating budget of Jesse Duplantis Ministry, which is millions a month. $78 million. That don't more bother God and the man in the moon. He's the one who come up with that figure.
This business is expected to generate more than $78 million a year on top of the operating budget. That money doesn't go to anyone in need. The expenses of the business have already been spent, so it's all profit to the CEO.
The blessing connector, say blessing connector. So you got a tithe, praise God. And then it goes on down. Let me just cover this one for you.
The CEOs of this business model run events disguised as being free, but then they are adamant that in order to receive the blessings from the mysterious man in the sky, you will need to tithe because it's the blessing connector.
But the best decision they ever made was to tithe consistently. My dad's dad taught him to tithe, and they made the decision to tithe.
A tithe is a portion, 10% of your income given as an offering to your local church. Fun fact, the word tithe literally means tenth in Hebrew. This business is so amazing because the cost of the product or service is relative to the income of the customers. Some customers may only be able to pay a few $100s per year, but some may be able to pay multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars per year for the same service.
When we would go on airlines, I had the Lord say to me one time, he said, there's coming a time when the airlines will not be fit to fly, and right now you start believing God for your jets, and you start believing, he said, that time is coming. Well, it came.
You're probably wondering why people donate to this business if the CEO isn't utilizing the donations to help uplift the community or show prosperity to others. What you're missing is that the audience is trained to see that the CEO reaping the massive rewards is proof that the prosperity gospel works. When the CEO buys a jet, it's proof that giving money to this business works. If the CEO can have a jet, you may be able to as well someday.
I'm going to make millions and millions and millions of dollars till the day Jesus comes or the rapture of the church. It's going to happen. There ain't no other choice. It's going to be. And it is. I don't mean that pridefully. Why? Because I got under a ministry and received what they said and hearing it and hearing it and hearing it instead of just heard it.
This business model is so powerful because it doesn't need to run any paid advertising to acquire new customers. They all attend via word of mouth.
He said, look up. And I looked up and I saw this jet and he said, I'm going to give you a plane. And I thought, you know what I thought? Man, I can't even fill up a Toyota. How am I going to get a plane? Ain't no way I can get a plane.
The desire for prosperity is so great that they would be selfish to not share these secrets with their closest friends and family members. You're just a blessing from God away from receiving a jet. He only asks that you give him 10% of your income for a few years. The long-term value of these customers is so high because once you begin attending the events, you will be ostracized if you opt out. The community will let you know that you are making a huge mistake by leaving. Leaving a church is a painful topic for Christians and for pastors. It is one of the saddest things that I've experienced, and I know I'm not alone. We've analyzed why acquiring customers is incredibly unique to this business model. Now it's time to analyze operational expenses. The 406 megachurches surveyed in 2005 averaged 20 full-time paid ministerial staff persons and 22 full-time paid program staff persons. The average number of volunteer workers, giving 5 or more hours a week to the church, was 284. Just a few minutes earlier, Jesse Duplantis said he was expecting to make $78 million in net profit after expenses. A big reason why is because churches have a lot of volunteers. We recently found that the average church engages 45% of adults and students in volunteer roles. Many even engage upwards of 71%. If churches ever needed more volunteers, then they could just label the position as an internship for college credit or as a way to break into the industry. Free labor is something I don't agree with, but this business model seems to have cracked the code on making it socially acceptable. You thought Joel, Jesse, and Kenneth were making money? Wait until you read this news headline. I've been saving the best for last. Feds find Mormon Church for illicitly hiding $32 billion investment fund behind shell companies. The prosperity preachers can buy private jets. Delta, the entire company, has a market cap of $25 billion, meaning the Mormon Church could buy Delta. Like all of the planes and all of the employees and all of the assets. Yeah, they can buy all of that with cash. LDS Church kept the lid on its $100 billion fund for fear tithing receipts would fall, account boss tells Wall Street Journal. If the congregation's tithing fell, who would pay the bills? If their fund is averaging 7% returns per year, how in the world do you expect $7 billion to keep the lights on? Former employees said the fund mushroomed from about $40 billion in 2012 to around $100 billion by 2019. They were clearly influenced by the prosperity gospel because that level of wealth seems unattainable, but I'm starting to get convinced that there's some truth to it. Tithing funds are always used for the Lord's purposes, to build and maintain temples and meeting houses, to sustain missionary work, to educate church members, and to carry on the work of the Lord throughout the world. I have high confidence that the Mormon Church follows through with their use of the funds being put towards good causes, but a $100 billion investment portfolio tells me that this is more business than charity. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and a nonprofit entity that it controlled have been fined $5 million by the Securities and Exchange Commission over accusations that the religious institution failed to properly disclose its investment holdings. To give you an idea of how light that fine is, their portfolio, returning an average of 6% per year, would be able to pay that fine off in 1 day with $250,000 left over. This business model is so amazing because your customers have essentially provided the startup capital for a $100 billion fund, and They don't ask for any returns. Think of how insanely amazing this setup is. You tell people that you'll use their funds to make the world a better place and that they'll earn a spot in utopia for life after death, and then you use the capital to start an investment fund that balloons to $100 billion, and the investors don't ask or expect to receive a single dollar in return. Even better is that their investors will go out into the world and recruit people to join your business who will give 10% of their income to your fund without asking for anything in return. When I say this is the best business model in the world, there's literally nothing that can come close. The U.S. Roman Catholic Church used a special and unprecedented exemption from federal rules to amass at least $1.4 billion in taxpayer-backed coronavirus aid. Another aspect to this business is the ability to receive government funds despite our country having a separation between church and state. Maybe we need to make that line a little more clear. Houses of worship and faith-based organizations that promote religious beliefs aren't usually eligible for money from the U.S. Small Business Administration. The Archdiocese of New York, for example, received 15 loans worth at least $28 million just for its top executive offices. Its iconic St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue was approved for at least $1 million. In Orange County, California, where a sparkling glass cathedral estimated to cost over $70 million recently opened, officials working at the complex received 4 loans worth at least $3 million. A SWOT analysis of this business model seems to indicate that the threat quadrant is empty. Even Joel Osteen with his private jets and $100 million business was like, screw it, let's grab another $4.4 million while we can. This is Joel Osteen's church on 5013C lookup, where it labels his church as having an unconditional exemption. His church is not required to show their income. To save the best for last, why is starting a megachurch the best business model in the world? Because you aren't required to pay taxes. Before we slam Joel Osteen and the other pastors as not paying taxes, it's not that simple. Tax-exempt status is allowed for nonprofit organizations that are operated exclusively for religious, educational, scientific, or other charitable purposes. This Houston Chronicle article found Lakewood Church's budget for the year 2017. Those expenses seem outlandish, but Joel is operating a legitimate-sized business with a former NBA arena as his office. I certainly don't have proof that these prosperity gospel preachers are buying jets from the tithing of its members, but it's hard to make the math work from other revenue sources to buy a $25 million jet cash.
But I don't care what it costs. It don't make no difference. Why? Because I received the laws of prosperity in my life.
No one really knows how much money flows upward to the pastor, how much money they make from other revenue sources, and how exactly they're able to afford jets. One thing is very clear, though. It pays to stand on stage and preach the prosperity gospel. Thanks for watching.